In the heart of Vermont lies Weybridge Cave. On a quiet evening in August 2013, two young explorers ventured into its depths, unaware of the challenges that awaited them. With no ropes or harnesses, they descended into the cave, facing narrow tunnels and dangerous drops. But as they made their way back to the surface, something went terribly wrong. What happened deep within the shadows of Weybridge Cave? This is a story of courage, danger, and a night that no one could have predicted. Before we dive into today's video, make sure to hit the bell icon so you don't miss any updates. We upload daily. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and join our amazing community. Now, let's get started. Weybridge Cave State Park is a hidden gem nestled in Vermont, home to the impressive Weybridge Cave Natural Area. This natural area, covering about 1 acre, was designated in the early 1980s and is a special spot for nature lovers. The centerpiece is Weybridge Cave, the largest cave in Vermont and the second largest in all of New England. This makes it a must-see for experienced cavers looking for a challenge. The park itself, acquired in 1966, spans 121 acres of beautiful fields and upland forests. However, it's important to note that this state park is completely undeveloped. There are no parking areas, trails, or facilities of any kind, making it a place for those who seek solitude and adventure. The forests are a mix of aspen, white birch, white pine, and red oak, providing a peaceful, natural setting. The open fields are leased to local farmers for hay production, which adds to the rural charm of the area. Weybridge Cave is not for the faint of heart. The entrance to the cave is a nearly 50-foot drop, making it necessary for only expert cavers with the proper gear and training to attempt exploration. The passageways inside the cave are known to be very difficult, requiring specialized equipment and advanced technical skills to navigate safely. Additionally, the intermittent stream that runs through the entrance of the cave can be dangerous, especially after heavy rains or when the water table is high. This cave is a natural wonder, but it's also a place where caution and preparation are key. Unlike other tourist spots, Weybridge Cave remains wild and untouched, offering a true adventure for those who are up to the challenge. The cave's underground passages and formations are a sight to behold, with unique rock structures that have formed over thousands of years. However, the cave's undeveloped nature means that it should be respected and treated with care. Weybridge Cave State Park is a unique and challenging destination for experienced cavers. With its undeveloped landscape, lack of facilities, and the thrilling Weybridge Cave, this park offers a raw and authentic caving experience. It's a place where nature reigns supreme, and only those with the skills and equipment should venture inside. On the evening of Tuesday, August 6, 2013, two young men in their 20s decided to explore Weybridge Cave. It was around 5:30 p.m. when they entered the cave, full of excitement and curiosity. However, they made a critical mistake right from the start. They didn't bring any ropes or harnesses with them. Despite the cave's reputation for being dangerous and challenging, they pressed on, unaware of the risks they were taking. As they made their way into the cave, they had to navigate through about 120 feet of passage. The entrance to Weybridge Cave is not easy. It's a narrow, sloped side crawl that requires careful maneuvering. The men squeezed through this tight space, determined to see what lay ahead. After that, they faced an 18-foot drop known as the nuisance drop. Without proper equipment, they had to rely on their strength and balance to get down safely. The most challenging part of their journey came next, a 40-foot drop into the main chamber of the cave. This drop is one of the reasons why Weybridge Cave is considered dangerous, even for experienced cavers. Still, the two men continued on, using their hands and feet to descend without the help of ropes or harnesses. They made it to the bottom and entered the main chamber where they could finally take a breath and look around. The cave was dark and silent, with the cool air surrounding them. After spending some time in the main chamber, the men decided it was time to head back. The climb out of the cave was going to be even more difficult without proper equipment. As they reached the bottom of the 40-foot drop, one of the men began to free climb out, trying to pull himself up the rocky walls. But something went terribly wrong. As he climbed, he lost his grip and slipped, falling about 15 feet down. The fall was severe. He landed hard on his feet and tailbone, and immediately he felt a sharp pain shoot through his body. His friend rushed to his side and quickly realized that the situation was dire. The man had a small cut on his head and his ankle was clearly broken, but the most alarming part was that he couldn't feel or move his lower body. Panic set in as they realized he might have injured his spine. His friend had no choice but to leave him there and had to climb out of the cave to get help. With no cell service inside the cave, he quickly climbed out on his own, desperate to get help. It was around 7 p.m. when he finally made it out and was able to call 911. He explained the situation to the dispatcher, telling them that his friend was seriously injured inside Weybridge Cave. The dispatcher immediately notified the Weybridge Fire Department and offered to call the Vermont Cave Rescue Team. However, the cave rescue team was not well known in the area, and the fire department was unsure if they could help. Still, the fire department responded to the scene to see what could be done. When the first responders arrived at the cave's entrance, they quickly realized the challenge ahead. The mouth of the cave is located at the bottom of a 30-foot depression in the woods. To make matters worse, the entrance to the cave is very small, with an opening less than 3 feet in diameter. It was clear that this was not an ordinary rescue operation. The fire chief assessed the situation and knew right away that his team wasn't equipped for such a complex rescue. They didn't have the specialized training or equipment needed to safely get the injured man out of the cave. Realizing they needed expert help, the chief made a crucial decision. He instructed the dispatcher to call in additional resources. They contacted Middlebury Technical Rescue, New Haven Technical Rescue, and Middlebury EMS, all of which were better equipped to handle the situation. They also called the Vermont Cave Rescue Network, which is specially trained for cave rescues, and Northern NY Life Flight out of Saranac Lake, a helicopter service that could provide rapid medical transport if needed. As these specialized teams were notified and began to mobilize, the rescue effort started to take shape. The clock was ticking, and every minute counted. The injured man was still inside the cave, unable to move, and the rescuers knew they had to work quickly but carefully to get him out safely. The situation was tense, but the arrival of experienced rescue teams brought a sense of hope. The complex and dangerous rescue operation was about to begin, with everyone focused on bringing the injured caver out alive. When the call for help came in, Steve Hazelton, the contact person for the Vermont Cave Rescue Team, knew he had to act fast. He quickly reached out to Scott Supernaw, who was an experienced caver, and asked him to join the rescue effort. Steve then packed up his gear and alerted the Rutland Regional Ambulance, instructing them to prepare the cave rescue cache, which contained all the specialized equipment they would need. To ensure that the most skilled cavers were brought in, he had his wife make calls to other nearby cavers who had the experience and expertise needed for such a challenging rescue. At around 7:45 p.m., one of the cavers received the call. He agreed to help and estimated that he could be there between 9:15 and 9:45 p.m., though he mentioned that he might not go underground himself. By 8:35 p.m., he was on his way, but finding the location proved difficult. He lost some time searching for Cave Road, eventually arriving at the scene around 10 p.m. When he got there, things were already in full swing. Steve Hazelton, who had originally planned to stay above ground and manage the rescue operation from there, had gone underground to be with the injured caver. Steve had brought a hard-wired field phone with him to maintain communication with the surface. There were 2 more field phones set up, one at the cave's entrance and another at the staging area in a nearby cornfield. Peter Grant, a 76-year-old caver who had been exploring caves for most of his life, was the first to arrive at the scene. Without hesitation, Peter tied a dynamic rope to a dead tree near the cave's entrance and entered the cave to assess the injured man. A couple of other cavers had already made their way down the 40-foot drop and were preparing for the rescue. They established a high 4-cam anchor a few feet back from the nuisance drop, providing a more secure setup for the rescue effort. When the technical rescue teams arrived, they realized that the original rope anchor needed to be more secure. They re-rigged the anchor to a stronger tree, ensuring it would hold during the rescue. Then, they set up a 600-foot haul line and a 300-foot belay line that ran deep into the cave. These lines were anchored far back to secure trees, giving the haul and belay teams enough room to work safely and efficiently. The rescue operation was complex and required careful coordination. Everyone involved knew that the injured caver's life depended on their teamwork and skill. As the rescue progressed, the teams worked tirelessly, communicating through the field phones and making sure every step was executed perfectly. The hours ticked by, but the focus never wavered. The dedication of these experienced cavers and rescue professionals was evident as they worked through the night to bring the injured man to safety. Scott Supernaw took charge of the staging area during the rescue, ensuring that everything was running smoothly. He knew the situation was critical, so he called into the cave to check on the progress. Rick Pingree, who was handling communications near the injured caver, got Steve Hazelton on the phone. Steve explained that they needed an experienced caver to rig the nuisance drop. Since Scott was one of the 4 people who had created a rescue plan for Weybridge Cave 10 years earlier, Steve knew Scott was the perfect person for the job. Without hesitation, Scott suited up and entered the cave. His first stop was at the initial drop, where Peter Gillette was stationed, carefully lowering gear down to the other cavers below. As Scott examined the high anchor that had been set up, he noticed something troubling. The anchor was supposed to be secured by 4 points, but only 2 of the small cams were actually bearing the load. These cams were anchored on one side of a vertical rock protrusion from the ceiling. The other 2 cams, on the opposite side, were not carrying any weight. This meant that if the primary anchors failed, the entire load would shift suddenly, potentially dislodging the rock from the ceiling. Such a disaster could send the rock crashing down the 18-foot drop, endangering the cavers below, as well as Peter and Scott themselves. Realizing the danger, Scott immediately went to work re-rigging the anchor. He adjusted it so that all 4 cams were sharing the load equally, making the setup much safer. Next, Scott looked for another anchor point over the drop to add extra security. He exited the cave briefly to retrieve his artificial rock anchors, knowing he needed the right tools for the job. When he returned, he found that a number 4 Camelot and a number 5 Tricam were perfect for what he needed. He set them up so that they were equalized, with the Tricom positioned slightly above and to the right of the spring-loaded camming device, SLCD, as a backup. This setup provided additional security, ensuring that the anchor would hold firm. By the time Scott had finished rigging the anchors, other vertical cavers had arrived to help. They brought with them the SCED and OSS, Oregon Spine Splint, along with other materials needed to safely package the injured caver. These additional rescuers were essential for the next phase of the operation. They assisted in preparing the patient for extraction, rigging the necessary equipment, and even modifying some of the tight passageways to make the rescue smoother. With everything in place, the team was ready to begin the delicate process of bringing the injured man out of the cave. Thanks to Scott's quick thinking and expertise, the rigging was now secure, and the team could focus on safely getting the caver out. The situation was still tense, but the careful coordination and skill of everyone involved gave the rescue effort the best possible chance of success. The rescue team knew from the beginning that there would be 2 critical pinch points in the cave, one at each of the vertical drops. These narrow passages, with just 12 to 14 inches of clearance, would be incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to move an immobilized patient through. The team had to find a way to enlarge these passages without putting the injured caver or the rescuers at greater risk. To tackle this challenge, the technical rescue team brought in a special tool, an air chisel modified to run off SCBA air bottles. These bottles, commonly used by firefighters, were essential to power the chisel. Firefighters worked tirelessly, shuttling these air bottles into the cave, down to the nuisance drop. Scott and Peter were stationed there, where they carefully lowered the bottles to the cavers working below. The work was grueling and required constant coordination. The 40-foot drop had the biggest challenge. The narrow S-shaped pinch point at this drop required extensive modification to make it wide enough for the patient to pass through. The nuisance drop also had a narrow slot that needed to be enlarged. Most of the widening was done with a sledgehammer, which took a lot of time and effort. In total, the team used 25 air bottles, each with a pressure of 2,215 psi to power the chisel. Since each bottle lasted only about 3 minutes, the process involved constant movement of equipment in and out of the cave. As the night wore on, additional cave rescue resources arrived, some from as far as 5 hours away in New York State. These included instructors from the National Cave Rescue Commission, NCRC, experts in cave rescues. They carefully checked and approved the rigging and patient packaging, ensuring everything was safe and secure before the final extraction. Inside the cave, the rigging team used the main haul line as a static anchor and set up a 4-to-1 jigger system, along with a belay line, to move the injured caver up the main drop in small segments of about 10 feet at a time. This process required resetting the jigger 3 times as they slowly and carefully lifted the patient. The extrication began around 3:30 a.m., and by 5 a.m., the injured caver had been moved through the walking passage to the nuisance drop. At this point, Scott took charge again, passing the main haul line through a pulley at his high directional anchor. Using relay voice communication, the team coordinated with the above-ground haul and belay teams to bring the patient up the drop. Once the patient reached the top, Scott had the outside teams tighten the belay line and slacken the haul line so that he could safely remove it from the high pulley. From there, they were able to carefully maneuver the patient over the lip of the drop and onto the only flat area large enough to hold the sked-wrapped body. The entire process was a testament to teamwork, expertise, and determination. The rescuers worked through the night, using every bit of their training and experience to ensure that the injured caver was safely extracted from the cave. The entrance tunnel was extremely narrow, making it very difficult to move the injured caver out of the cave. The rescue team had to rotate the patient onto his uninjured side to even attempt getting him through the tight space. The tunnel was so cramped that the people helping at the head and feet of the litter struggled to lift it while also trying to move their own bodies toward the entrance. They tried using hand tethers attached to the litter handles on one side of the sked, but this didn't provide enough leverage to lift the injured caver properly. Every movement caused the injured caver intense pain, especially around his lower back, where he was experiencing severe tenderness near the sacrum. At one point, the injured caver became stuck in the narrow passage, forcing the team to carefully move him backward to a small level area to reassess the situation. Scott passed an air chisel over the patient, ensuring that his face was protected with a plastic shield. The head attendant used the chisel to break away a large piece of the sidewall that was blocking their path and preventing them from moving forward. This slight adjustment helped, but the passage was still too tight to easily maneuver the litter. Thinking creatively, Scott suggested rigging a tensioned trolley line to help guide the injured caver out. After a bit of trial and error, the team decided to give it a try. They sent one end of a 7/16" static line, which they had used earlier to lower gear, out to the entrance of the cave. There, the line was tensioned using a Z-rig system, while Scott clipped the other end of the line to the 4-cam anchor point in the ceiling of the passage. The team attached 2 trolley pulleys, one for each end of the litter, to the tensioned line. Despite their efforts, they still couldn't lift the injured caver enough to keep him from scraping along the rough cobbled floor of the tunnel. Realizing they needed more leverage, they threaded the haul line through another pulley on the trolley line. This setup finally gave them the lift they needed, and with each pull on the haul line, they were able to slowly inch the injured caver forward. The process was agonizingly slow, with the injured caver sometimes screaming in pain as they moved him. However, despite his suffering, the injured caver showed incredible patience as the team adjusted their rigging and slowly inched him out of the cave. After 12 long hours of lying on his back in the dark, cramped cave, the injured caver was finally brought to the surface at 6:30 a.m. on August 7th, 2013. Daylight was just breaking as they carried him up to the camp area. There, EMS teams quickly assessed his condition and transferred him to a backboard for further stabilization. At 7 a.m., the patient was loaded into a pickup truck and driven to the waiting ambulance. The rescue team stayed behind to clean up the gear and swap out equipment, wrapping up their operation at around 8 a.m. After a long and exhausting night, they had successfully completed a challenging rescue, bringing the injured caver to safety. The rescue operation at Weybridge Cave was a testament to the courage, determination, and teamwork of everyone involved. Despite the difficult conditions and the extreme narrowness of the cave, the rescuers never gave up. They worked tirelessly through the night, using every tool and technique at their disposal to ensure the safe extraction of the injured caver. In the end, their dedication paid off, and they were able to bring him to safety after a grueling 12-hour ordeal. This story is a powerful reminder of the dangers that can come with cave exploration and the importance of being fully prepared. It also highlights the incredible efforts of rescue teams who are willing to risk their own safety to save others. Thank you for watching this video. If you found this story interesting, please give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more thrilling cave exploration stories. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Stay safe and see you in the next adventure.